Caliginous is a word that I'll guarantee that 99% of the fandom has never heard of until the release of the third new world in the highly praised Plant vs Zombies 2 mod Reflourished, and for anyone not in the know, it means dark, dim or misty. Caliginous Carnival followed the rather messy holiday mashup and the tank spam fest that is Steam Ages. It's generally considered by the player base as the mod's greatest world to date. Do I disagree? Do I agree? In this video I'll go through the world, its theme, the plants, the zombies, the levels, and come to a conclusion whether Cally Carny is peak, or if the devs are the real carnies. Right, before we get into it, remember to subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, and leave a like please. Also, yes, I happened to shoot this right before we got our Christmas decorations up in my house, so yeah, the drawers look a bit different now. Caliginous Carnival takes place in the 1930s, during the peak years of the circus as the entertainment form. You know, when people had to go out. The zombies are taking advantage of the abandoned carnival because the jugglers left behind brains or something. The lawn design is immaculate, especially if you like big tongs. It's got an excellent purple theme, and there's even a poster that changes for every level. I mean, just look at these posters. Excellent art direction across the board, especially compared to the rather bland looking Steam Ages, even if that is kind of the point of Steam Ages, but yeah. I think Caliginous Carnival's design, much better. The world has two main gimmicks. The first is the tarot cards, which fire projectiles when planted on, and these powers can make zombies tougher, weaker, infect them with sun, ice or plant food, among others, so these can be good or bad, adding an element of chance to the meta, and unlike most other lawn gimmicks, the contents of the tarot cards switch when you replay a level. The sun cards are important as this takes place in the night, and unlike the so-called Night World Neon Mixtape Tour, this world follows the Dark Ages system and lacks falling sun. The card tiles can also spawn and despawn mid-level, bumping away any plants in their way. While having an element of RNG can be very problematic, I think this is an excellent gimmick as it forces players to think hard about where they plant, and in some cases it might be best to avoid them altogether if the card is a dangerous one such as the grinder box or shield ones. The second gimmick is the jack-in-the-boxes. Unlike doing the modern PopCap move and bringing back the OG jack-in-the-box zombie with terrible animations and borrowed clothes from a totally different zombie, the devs added them as obstacles, which can be destroyed, but if you're too late, they can spawn boost candies or a range of miniature enemies, mostly rushy ones that are a threat to your defense. It's a fun gimmick that gets annoying at times, but it does give an incentive to use intensive carrot, so that's nice. Now, one of the most important aspects, the unlockable plants. I think all of the plants fit this world pretty well, in terms of appearance, which Steam Ages kind of fell short at. A vanilla fan and a potion lobbing flower don't exactly scream Industrial Revolution to me. First up is Potato Chip. A 3-cost plant that deals chip damage, an absolutely delightful pun. His costume and plant food are references to Pringles, and he's great to use on tarot cards to see what's under. 3 of them can take out a basic zombie in the beginning, so he can be used to build up sun. Not exactly a plant that will set the world on fire, but very good at what he does. Next up, Caramel Popcorn. Once you get past the fact she is just a remodeled Colonel Polt, she's got a pretty dope design, originating from the OG version of PVZ3. She fires kernels with mild splash to cover zombies in sap and slow them down, and can fire popcorn bags that do 3x3 splash and much more damage. Overall, she's quite good, a bit unreliable at times and overpriced. However, God bless her existence for reviving the visual sap effect for Sapfling. Don't get me wrong, I'm still never going to use Crap Thing, but that was a great change. Boom Balloon Flower, arguably one of Vanilla's last reasonably balanced plants, makes an appearance after previously being a Gemium with some stat tweaks. Not only does it fit the carnival theme perfectly, but it's pretty useful for picking off individual threats, especially jack-in-the-boxes, or Jitbers as I'm calling them from here on out because it's too much of a tongue twister to keep saying jack-in-the-box. Its price tag can be an issue, and I'll phase that out of my setups pretty much as soon as part 2 arrive, but you can do some good things with Best Boyfriend. The Target Grass is also brought over from Vanilla, and being a mod obsidian plant, it was obviously nerfed. While I like the idea of it, I dropped the feline tattletale quite quickly because it's just too volatile in this world for its gimmick to utilise its full potential. It's hard to sustain the grown tigers when they are prone to getting blown up by balls or eaten by critters. The first brand new plant in part 2 is Magic Shroom, and this is a plant I really wasn't impressed by at first. He's a medium-priced, medium DPS plant that has a charge-up manual attack where he can infect a zombie with ice, sun or plant food. The highest chance is the ice, which is decent, but not mind-blowing when you can, you know, just do it yourself. And the sun sounds good, but just like the tarot card, the infection wears off, so you have to kill the zombie quickly. The plant food is very useful, but it's pretty rare. I did come around on the mushroom of the magic elements eventually, to the point it's a contender for the best plant from Cally Carny. I just had a bad habit of using the projectile on the jibbers. However, the same cannot be said for the final plant in this world, the Great Zucchini, or more like the Great Oxymoron, because this thing is not good. TGZ is basically a multi-use impair, which sounds great, but some gimmicks are just meant for single-use plant, especially in a chaotic world like this where your defense gets shuffled and weakened and broken into at a moment's notice. It kind of takes up space where you could be planting something much better. Oh well, it's not like it's 375 sun. Yeah, that is a hefty price considering the lack of sun availability in this world. And unlike Magic Shroom, it's defenseless on its own as it can't damage the transformed basic Carny. So if you lose a good chunk of your setup and have just a Zook, then you're out of luck. Overall, I only use it in one non-mandatory level. It might be good outside of Cally Carny, but it's the worst plant this world has to offer by a country mile. There's also 2 Gemium plants tied to the world. I won't go into too much detail as they're not actually unlocked for your playthrough, but the first is Solar Sage, who I've never been a fan of in vanilla, but the steep sunk cost increase means she's not really worth using here in my humble opinion. I'd honestly prefer to use Sunbeam with an instant. Sweet Pea on the other hand is an excellent crowd controller that works a treat in this world. Its plant food is brilliant in terms of both gameplay and visuals, just look at it. It's not a good plant in the early game given its relatively expensive cost, but to help me a ton in the later levels, would recommend. Now the zombies, and there are a lot of them, so this may take a while. Though it's worth noting a lot of them come from Vanilla's backyard big top timed event, and if you've forgotten what that is, then I can't blame you. First of all, the basic squad all have different designs to each other. Pretty cool. The first new zombie is the Carny Imp twins, who split into 2 imps in separate lanes after being defeated. This doesn't sound too troublesome as long as you kill them before they advance too far, but I did have quite a few issues of them getting into the back of my defence. Especially as they can bypass your mows if they split on the back column, and they're thrown by the Gargantua too, so have fun with that. The second is the Stilt Walker, who walks over plants until his stilts are destroyed and can't be knocked back. F in the chat for the Hurricane users out there. Like myself. He's not too hard to combat, but can be annoying if his stilts are broken right when he's on a close range plant that is suddenly vulnerable. Next are the Vendor zombies that come in 2 variants, pink and blue. The pink boosts zombies' toughness, while the blue boosts zombies' speed. So basically the Dark Alchemy, Brainbuster and Dark Ages encompassed into a pair of zombies. Not the most dangerous threat, but you gotta have some soft guys to make the tough guys not only look tougher, but become tougher. The Trapeze zombies are basically swashbucklers that come in groups and have more health. So basically, don't be placing your Snapdragons, Choys, etc. on column 5. The first zombie that will probably give you issues is the Fire Breather zombie, especially if you're using close range or defensive plants, though it does give Tiger Grass purpose as he will stop to eat the tigers, although if he does this successfully, the grass is extremely vulnerable. Debuting in the first level of part 2 is the Funhouse Mirror zombie, and this has to be one of the most creative zombies in the history of PVZ2. She reflects projectiles 5 on the tarot cards, which have varying results. You can transform plants into several different attackers, freeze plants, and even force feed a plant food, which had me very confused with this rogue BBF Doomshroom. This forces you to really think about planting on the cards as it could lead to a negative effect, and even if you do wind up with a Gatling P, it may end up replacing a more important plant like Magic Shroom. The Carny Cannon fires a single cannonball imp on the 5th column of any lane, so in case the Trapeze zombies didn't scare you off from planting non-defensive plants here, this imp will do the trick. But he's just an imp! An imp with a pretty tough helmet. In all seriousness, he's not that difficult to combat. Honestly, I had more issues with the Carny Imp twins. The Magician zombie teleports himself and other zombies around the map. Pretty annoying. And if left on the lawn for a while, he can summon doves which steal plants and are almost impossible to kill before they can fly away with your pricey winter melons. Very annoying. Thankfully, he doesn't summon the doves often, but if he does, you'll probably lose several plants at once, and they may be difficult to replace. Also, he's immune to all magic attacks, including tarot cards, so time warp ain't gonna work here. Speaking of zombies that wreak havoc and destroy your entire defense, step up, Prankster zombie. Hoo boy. Gotta have something to rival the mechanic, right? No, not that one, for the most cancerous zombie in the game. This guy stops at the 6th column and lobs dynamite at your plants. Similar to the Dust Devil zombie from Multiverse, except he does much more damage and prioritises expensive plants. You know, the majority of plants unlocked in this world. You see why the zucchini kind of falls short here? There's solutions to this madness, such as pumpkin and intensive carrot, but you better get killing this guy quickly, otherwise you ain't got nothing to kill with. Not to mention that defensive plants aren't much use as he brings out some buzzer thing and tears away at plants, which also means eat-on activation plants are about as useful as a chocolate teapot. Also, to up the ante even more, he drops his teeth when he dies. Yes, those teeth. Needless to say, I'm not a fan of this zombie at all. Thankfully, he's not spammed as much as the aforementioned mechanic, but amongst the chaos in this world, this guy just feels dangerous for the sake of being dangerous. That being said, his design is great and the animations, despite being lifted from Tomb Raider, suit him perfectly. I'll give him that at the very least. The last introduced zombie, Sam the Zombot, more on him later, is the music doll, which is essentially a bulky boombox zombie that summons 3 monkeys when she dies. While this can be dangerous as she is likely to advance pretty far due to her health, I didn't find her as troublesome as the last 2 discussed. Now for the spawned enemies, quite a lot of these as well. First is the Grinder Head, who is a carnival themed brickhead with the extra trait of spawning a monkey upon defeat. A cute and clever use of the organ grinder, which I remember messing around with on carnival games for the DS. Anyone remember that game? I suppose I should talk about the mechanical monkey zombie now. He's very similar to the chicken, but with a bit more health, he's quite a nuisance. Even more so is the Carny Ball, which passes through plants at a high speed and takes out one near the back. It has quite a few hit points, so unless you have a really good defense, you're probably going to lose a plant. The Carny Nibbler functions similarly to the monkey, albeit slower, tankier, and eats a lot faster, so pretty annoying as well. In part 2, the Carny Teddy starts showing up, which comes in pairs from a Jibber, and functions exactly like a mecha football zombie. Everyone seems to think this guy is the devil himself, but honestly, I didn't really have that many problems with him. He's fairly easy to defeat. I only really had trouble with Ted Turner in Night 30 due to the level gimmicks. More on that in a bit. The Carny Snorter is a smackhead you may meet around the alley of a carnival. He's missing a few teeth and his hair looks like it's falling off harder than the popularity of a clip. Oh wait. Carny Snorter is another demonstration of Reflourished penchant for obstacle zombies that don't deal damage, and yes, it's a large nose with a face, including a nose. And the last toy is the Action Gargantua. Gargimp legal with more health and slightly slower speed, but he sure looks better than that visual atrocity. And yes, he's another instant killer. Honestly, I think this is just unnecessary. He's obnoxious as hell, has as much health as a knight. I think people's hate towards Ted DiBiase is misguided when this burden exists. So that's it for zombies. Wait, there's 2 secret reskins that have a very rare chance of showing up on the lawn. Yes, that's the thing. Very interesting. Shame one of them is a big head variant, which, as you guys all know, I despise. Right, let's go over some prominent levels. Level 1 is your bog standard tutorial level. Level 2 introduces the Carniums with a pre-planted cattail for some reason, as well as the first harmful tower card and the Jibbers. Level 5 is a locked and loaded level with no primary producers and unlimited squash. Weird, but I don't mind it. Speaking of weird, Level 8 has a special seed bank that prevents the use of standard attackers that are less than 250 sun, and no Cally Carny plants are available, with a pre-selected mushroom taking the place of potato chip, which, why would you have a level that specifically bans plants unlocked in the world? I get that you're supposed to use other plants in general and not just those that come from the world, but it feels kind of iffy that they specifically substitute Tater Chip in this level. Fast forward a couple more levels and we get possibly the maddest brainbuster in the game, Blight of Hand. This is a spin on the classic memory game where you must keep your eye on the correct container as they shuffle around. In this case, zombies of varying toughness are shuffled around, with the idea that the stronger ones lead to denser waves in which said stronger zombies are more prevalent. You're given a large amount of sun to use pre-selected plants that don't have any recharge in order to combat the waves. I can see this brainbuster dividing opinions, given it's somewhat reliant on your tracking skills, but I think this is a fantastic concept that's executed very well. Some of the most fun I had playing this world is the Blight of Hand duology. Level 14 was a difficult one for me. with it being a locked and loaded level with 2 lanes completely out, so you have to use boom balloon flowers to sort out the zombies on these lanes. And with the Carny imps and trapeze squads, this can be quite tricky. Massive attack time in level 16 where you're introduced to the strongman Garg, and given the 3 unlocked Cally Carny plants, Child Guard, Stunion, Lava Guava and Aki, you know, the plant nobody talks about. It's pretty much an amalgamation of everything we've seen so far, a pretty challenging stage that I had to beat with power-ups the first time, though I did complete it moleless later on. Level 17 introduces the Mirror Zombie, but it's level 20 where she truly makes her presence felt. You're only given chi plants with Puff being your only standard attacker, and escape route. Why? Oh, haha, okay. Level 22 had the seldom seen don't spend sun for X seconds objective along with the Magician. The objective is fairly easy, the Magician will probably cause a few issues with the doves completely catching me by surprise the first time and prompting me to restart. The second time I got pretty lucky as my target grasses were able to thwart the not so peaceful birds. Following this is a pretty interesting level to showcase the magic shroom. A last stand with a rigged seed bank to prevent the use of any other standard attackers. It's also worth noting that you shouldn't skip the dialogue so you don't miss the description of Magic Shroom's manual attack, which I did. However, we have to get critical for a moment because the next level is what I believe to be the worst of Cally Carny. First of all, it introduces the Prankster and has a pre-planted squash and melon pole behind 2 tool nuts. The squash makes sense to show that Prankster stops 3 columns in, but the melon pole and tool nuts, The level honestly does a pretty poor job of teaching the player about the fact Prankster prioritises the most expensive plants on the lawn. It's something I never would have clocked if I hadn't read the almanac. The tool nuts are likely there to show that he can't target the 4th frontmost lanes, but again, that's not clear. The guy shows up way too much here for my liking, and the level is 4 flags long, which I think is just way too long for a level that introduces such a dangerous zombie. Also, the Snorter debuts here. Cool. Eventually I'll beat the level with Bloomerang, Spikeweed and a rare use of Boom Balloon Flower part 2. But yeah, a rare miss from the devs in this world. Level 25 is another Blight of Hand, the Relief, and another good one at that. It has a different seed bank, which is a good thing. Prankster shows up and can tear apart your defense, so thankfully they give you the carrot. And spank my ass and call me Doris because mistletoe was actually useful for once in this mod. 28 is a tricky locked and loaded level that gives you the dilemma of planting mana streams on the tower cards, which largely consists of bucket cards, so you're adding and removing buckets a lot, as well as the imps helmets. 29 has an objective of defeating 16 zombies within 10 seconds, so you must make use of the flagged cards, which spawn more zombies. This one frustrated me, but I have to admit it's a clever gimmick, and eventually I decided to bring both Cherry Bomb and Pomegranate to clutch the final wave, but managed the objective with just one of them. The last 3 are pretty brutal. 30 is a level with 10 harmful tower cards, which you can basically treat as mold colonies, so your defense will be closer forward. The thing is, teddies. This is probably the only level where I really found them to be an issue, and they force your plants on the cards, and you must defeat 10 of them, but I found this objective pretty passive. It's something you can only really fail if your defense is incredibly OP. It took me a while, but Sweet Pea was the key. 31 is a culmination of everything seen in this world, with the cards shuffling a hell of a lot. As a long and hard final regular level, it took me numerous tries and EP to score the win. And then you come face to face with a Zombot Catastrophically OP, whatever that means. This guy is basically a reskinned Zombot War Wagon with a gross amount of HP. And the final tower card is introduced in this level, which fires a huge colourful projectile that deals massive damage to the Zombot. I figured out this gimmick pretty quickly, but it took me like 10 minutes to get from the second phase to the third. This is a 4-phase battle, mind you. It was after a couple of attempts I realised that you should dig up the plant that you're using on the special tower card and replant it when the Zombot is vulnerable, which is something I could have utilised with the helpful cards throughout the world. This is also helpful to avoid Mirror's counter, as she deflects the projectile and takes out an entire lane. All in all, it's a pretty intense boss fight and a good one at that. It features every plant unlocked or showcased in this world bar Solar Sage, for obvious reasons, with Teleportator Mine making a guest appearance instead. So now, for the burning question, is this Reflourished best world so far? Well, if you've been listening, you know that I was not overly huge on Steam Ages. The theme isn't to my taste and some of the level design was really bad, especially when it came to the mechanic. However, that world did give way to one much better mechanic, the Maypop, which is comfortably my favourite new plant in this mod, and by that I mean not in vanilla. Holiday Mashup is a world I did really enjoy, minus some levels. And I wasn't a fan of the resistances, as it's difficult to remember what type of attacks are ineffective on which zombies. So I think this is quite comfortably the best regular world in Reflourished so far. You may have picked up on the term regular there. Yep, I'm talking about the standard worlds on the world map here. Out of the second realm, Assault Airspace is just so freaking cool. And I would give it a slight edge over Cally Carny, but the Carnival is an excellent world nonetheless.